Hello and welcome to our special series on amplifying growth, achieving impact. I'm Pallavi from People Matters. Through this exclusive video series in partnership with upGrad for Business, we aim to dive into areas like role transformation, reducing skills obsolescence, and enhancing employee engagement that greatly influence an organization. The learnings and the insights gathered from industry experts will culminate into a multimedia ebook titled How Do We Empower Organizations to Thrive in the New Age Economy, to help you achieve effective growth journeys and thrive in the future of work. For today's session, we'll focus on role transformation and how organizations can create a balance between growth and cost cutting by upskilling its people. How can they make the most of their resources by allocating the right roles to the right people? Where should organizations focus on to create winning initiatives across employee groups? To discuss this and more, we have with us Gaurika Tandon, Head Learning, Engagement and Employer Brand, Bennett, Coleman and Company Limited. She has 18 plus years of experience in human resources across consulting and corporate and has worked in diverse sectors like media, HR consulting, pharma and healthcare, manufacturing, BPO services, and ITES. Gaurika has been involved in startups and HR transformation assignments with a focus on building an effective HR function. Welcome, Gaurika. I want to start off with some of your insights on the matter of role transformation. According to you, what is the value behind upskilling people across employee groups to take on new roles in line with the evolving skill demand? And how do we ensure that the right people get the right roles?
Hi, Pallavi. Good morning, and thank you for this question. Actually, if you really look at the world today that it's a disruptive world, and we all know that. And a couple of years ago, we had coined a word or an acronym VUCA, which actually stood for volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. And while we were still watching the VUCA world, the world changed for us. And the new acronym that seems to be doing the rounds now is BANI, where B stands for brittle, A stands for anxious, non-linear, and incomprehensible. Now, imagine where we were just dealing with ambiguity, we're talking about non-linear and anxious. And that really makes it very difficult for individuals to deal with it. So while in the VUCA world, we were still talking about instability, the BANI world is talking about chaos. And chaos to a level where not just individuals, but organizations are trying to struggle and find a sweet spot for themselves. While organizations were doing their 3-year and 5-year planning, the only thing that they were planning for was a healthy present, a short term, probably mid-term economic volatility, and then an uncertain future. Now, what the Bani world has taught us that the uncertain future has come right at the top. So now just for example, look at the game of cricket for that matter. There used to be a test game, and the kind of players that were playing a test game were people who were stable, who could hold their ground, who could play well and just not get out. That changed to T20. Sorry, first actually it changed to one day. Now, one day came in with 50 overs, and again, the first 10 overs were stability, and the rest of the other overs were when the players actually opened up. Now, that changed to T20. So, the players who were playing the test match are clearly not your players who are going to play your T20. So if you really look at it from an organization perspective, it's important that you choose your team for the game that you're playing. Look at another game for that matter, chess. It's very different from checkers, because if you look at checkers, the entire movement of checkers is pretty much the same. Whereas in chess, every player has its own path, has its own importance, and has its own use and utility. So, what leaders today or organizations have to do is find the right player for the right game, deploy the piece exactly where that piece is required. So, to me, that is the challenge in front of the organization today. That how do you first define your own game? First, you define whether you're playing chess or you're playing checkers. Once you've decided that, you define your team, and then find the right talent for the right job. Yeah. Thanks,
Well,
Pallavi.
that's an interesting analogy you gave. What a start to the conversation. And joining us in this conversation, we also have Minaxi Indra, President upGrad for Business. Minaxi has almost 2 decades of business growth experience across Asia Pacific. She's a purpose-driven leader, motivated by building businesses that positively impact customers and the marketplace. She leads marketing, sales, solutions, and customer success teams for upGrad for Business. Welcome, Minaxi, to the program.
Thank you so much, Pallavi, and lovely to have this session with you, Gaurika.
Well, Meenakshi, when we talk about designing talent strategies for the future of work, what have been some key trends that you must have observed that impact how leaders today design their learning and development programs?
Interesting question, Pallavi. So, what we are trying to do is reimagine certain aspects of skilling that we already knew of, a shifted perspective, perhaps. I'm going to take and forward the point that Gaurika had mentioned, moving from the VUCA world to the BANI world. So what we are also seeing in the market and with industries is, what is it that we can reimagine? What are the kind of shifting perspectives that we can bring in? So over the last couple of years, we've spoken to about 100 odd industry and HR leaders. And what we understood from them were that they were usually looking at either consolidating within their organization or amplifying growth. In my view, it manifests in one of three ways: enabling employee engagement, offering competency-based role transformations, or reducing skill obsolescence. In some organizations, it's actually all of the above, and that makes for then really interesting conversations. Observing these key themes, and after reflecting back on successful programs that we have delivered for our clients, we connected these dots to identify 6 facets that encapsulate the 6 trends that we are seeing in the workforce of now, and of course, the workforce of the future. I like to think of these key trends in the visual of a cube, as there are 6 facets that point to the underlying factors that new age businesses are considering. I'll try to kind of bring all of these 6 across with an acronym, MOSAIC, for ease of recall for our audience today. The first one I'll talk about from an M perspective is that of measurable matrices. What really are the matrices that learning and development teams or business teams want to run when they're planning any engagement? This is becoming hypercritical for the world that we live in today. The other one would be O for outcomes. Here we reference to business outcomes. Gone are the days where different entities or different units in an organization work in silos. Progressive organizations, progressive HR teams are working very closely with businesses and speaking the business language. So when we talk about the outcomes from a program or from a learning intervention, we're always talking about alignment of it to business outcomes. The third one is that of S, which is standardized to scale. Very interesting in the VUCA world, in the BANI world, on how can we have programs that can be deployed across the organization, but also enables us to scale them out. The fourth one is that of agility to adapt. That's the A part of it. How can our organizations be more agile in their thinking, be more adaptable to the environment, to the macroeconomic factors around us? The next one is very, very cool, which is the I for industry readiness. There are organizations which are talking about leading 4.0. There are organizations who are already manifesting their outputs in terms of industry 5.0. And if economic reports are to be believed, the next 2 years are going to be more of that. So the more that organizations can stay ahead of it and be ready for the changes in the industry, the better it is going to be from a business growth or an optimization perspective. Last but not the least is that of credentialing. And when we say credentialing, we don't really just mean certifications, but more about qualifications as a differentiator to the talent that organizations either have in their company or the ones that they hope to bring into their organizations. Bringing this all together, the MOSAIC or the MOSAIC helps employees get performance outcomes from their roles and enterprises get business outcomes that matter. It also gives practical insights on implementing a reflective, business outcomes-oriented learning and development strategy that is driven by business practices and has everyone in an organization being a stakeholder to it. Very critical for success of any project to have alignment across the board, across stakeholders.
Sure, Minaxi. In fact, talking about investing in L&D programs, so Gaurika, my question is to you. Currently, we see for companies offering continuous growth opportunities to employees and investing in the L&D programs, this has become very, very critical, of prime importance. So, coming to how Bennett Coleman is leading its skilling agenda, what was the driving force behind designing your learning calendar with upGrad for Business, and what actually made you choose upGrad as your learning partner?
Sure. Thanks, Pallavi. And Minaxi did talk about a lot of industry experience that they bring with us, and that was quite important. But just to take a step back, as an organization, we're part of the media industry, and we're part of print. We are a 175-year-old, in fact, 180 to be precise, year-old organization. We've seen the world wars, we've seen the economic transitions, and we've lasted it all, and quite strongly at that. But the latest S curve that we're on is where we're trying to transform ourselves as an organization in the world of content and not just print. Therefore, it was a beautiful cusp for us. We had already embarked on that journey, and then COVID hit us, but it kind of helped because as an organization, we are trying to transform ourselves, and which requires very new skills, which requires everybody to look at the world differently. So I think while Meenakshi was talking about Mosaic, it's pretty much the same application to us where the world of business was changing and learning really had to follow and dovetail itself to business strategy. We cannot be operating in silos. So what we really set out to do was drive a culture of learning where we move from push to pull. Because what was happening in the earlier years is learning was getting measured as the total number of courses that you were doing, certifications that you were doing in terms of learning hours that you had, and people were clocking it because their managers were nominating them. We wanted to change that and say that we will create content which will create the right hooks for individuals, which we called the pull strategy of learning. So we wanted to start with that. Second, we really wanted learning to become a habit. So if you just have an instructor-led program for a particular day, it could build awareness, but it will not bring practice, it will not bring play. So we really wanted to build journeys which we could offer an individual where the individual not only got to learn a particular skill, apply it, and there's a beautiful format that upGrad presented for us, and it kind of just blended in with what we wanted to do. So that again was an important agenda for us. Besides, of course, the learner experience. Because if you look at creating journeys and you look at the push strategy coming to pull, one of the cornerstones for this enablement would actually be learner experience. That learner experience will talk itself in whether learners are coming back to us in terms of, so one matrix, of course, is the unique learner percentage, but the other would be the same learner, what all is he engaging with us or she engaging with us for, and what is the experience that they have. Because what we wanted to do is bring personalized solutions, yet scalable solutions. So that had to come where we could create mass programs on one end. We could also create bespoke programs which were very, very specific to a particular cohort. So I think over the last 2 years, what we've really been able to do is create a learning architecture which sits on content that is ready to be deployed, that gets curated, and that has multi dimensions to it and not just classroom training. We're also looking at being able to deploy technology in a way where we're able to get learning insights such that programs that are getting offered progressively are actually building on our learnings of the past. We're also looking at learner engagement programs where we're looking at learning adoption, not just not just by counting the number of learning hours the individual has put, but also get to an L3 level where we get to the manager to understand what change in behavior has been initiated and how much of it is sustained. So all in all, I think it was the learning culture that we were trying to build, and it just happened that upGrad came with the solutions that clicked for us pretty well.
Well, I would love to know more from you on the impact that it had on the learner, but I want to quickly bring in Minaxi, before we jump on to the next question. So Minaxi, if you could also tell us, how did upGrad for Business design the program, keeping in mind the needs of Bennett Coleman, and how were there any specifics? How did you support the implementation of the program?
Sure. Now that's a long topic, Pallavi. I'm sure that that's going to take more than like 20 minutes. But to be very candid, our engagement with BCCL has been gratifying on many counts. If we were to paraphrase, we say that there were three objectives that we were really focused on. One was providing personalized learning and development opportunities to the workforce, which Gaurika mentioned. The second one was accelerating career growth for their employees with continuous upskilling opportunities. The third one was that to create learning programs that empower these employees with both convenience and choice so that we could curate those personalized learning journeys across devices and even while people were on the go. What was really interesting for us and really gratifying for us was that the BCCL leadership team was focused on building these skills that delivered a higher degree of resilience, creativity, agility, and embrace the future business scenarios in a post-pandemic world. This was very exciting for our content team, for our delivery team, because they got to really break out and think laterally, think creatively. So it starts from us. We need to kind of think like that before we can kind of go and push this out and request concurrence from the BCCL team. Our strategy here was to bring attention towards a change in the mindset that could be brought through skilling in behavioral and professional skills. This behavioral transformation is based on our trademark learning architecture, which we call AKAR, which is AKAR. AKAR, of course, is the Hindi word for to shape, to form, to evolve, or to develop. It's a trademark learning architecture, which is a unique learning methodology which encompasses the four elements, which are awareness, which is the A part of it, knowledge, the K part of it, application, the other A part of it, and reinforcement, which is the R. One part of this design was about giving straight approach modules to competencies like competency-based leadership development, niche skill development, change management, decision-making, execution excellence, strategic thinking, communication, impactful interactions, just to name a few. But really the difference between this and anything else that you see out in the market is that it was based on this four-step process of awareness, knowledge, application, and reinforcement. On the awareness phase, what we really partnered with the BCCL team was had our learners go through an awareness step of their own in terms of their own competency perspective. They were enabled to reflect on positive and negative behaviors of theirs and other learners on the same competency. This was then followed by situational judgment assessments to analyze their behavior and provide suitable learning recommendations that also addressed why they should take part in this program and what was in it for them. The second leg of this was the knowledge aspect, which was delivered by subject matter experts who brought in outside-in perspective from all their years of experience in the industry. This modality was a mix of virtually delivered and physically delivered sessions. This included bespoke and calendar programs under themes like skill up, team up, lead up. The third leg of this was application of this learning. And we know that in any learning intervention, knowledge is one part of it, but really the application and retention of the workforce is very critical. This part was facilitated, emulated, and demonstrated through focus group discussions, case studies, and small group coaching. The employees were able to apply and demonstrate the behaviors expected of them as they led and managed teams. The modalities involved in this phase included coaching and group gamification. Coaching provided anonymity to help with the current demonstrations of these behaviors in the workforce, and journaling every day as an effective learn to lead technique. Both these modes, along with the group gamification, helped employees to understand how to apply the learned behavior and the skills. The learners were then evaluated with a layer of coach evaluation along with these situational judgment questions. The last leg of these was reinforcement of these concepts. This happened through reverse mentoring in the master classes, which was co-facilitated with senior leaders from the BCCL group. With about 40,000 learner hours and a feedback of 4.5 plus, this program had a direct impact on the learners. And after 1 year post-skilling, it's very humbling for us when learners come back and they talk about the direct correlation of these learning interventions with performance improvement.
Thank you, Minaxi. So I'll come back to Gaurika, and as we were discussing the impact, we really love to hear from you. What has been the impact on the learners after the program, and how do you think this learning calendar supports companies' long-term growth strategy?
Thanks. So, thank you, Minaxi. First and foremost, I think the partnership has been very fulfilling because what we really wanted to do was to get the learner into the class or at least learning mode and then actually benefit as an organization because that's the other side of the coin. So some of the matrices that helped us believe that we're in the right direction was the fact that our unique learner percentage, we closed last year at about 72%, which clearly means that 72 out of 100 people did some sort of learning that got recorded. While I as a learning head, I really want to believe that the other remaining 28 were also learning. It's just that it didn't get captured it just didn't get captured. But 72% learning penetration is a great one to have, and we hope to scale further heights. Meenakshi did mention we did have L1, L2, L3 level of measurements where we've got managers coming back and telling us that there is changed behavior. That comes also on the back of the 4.5 plus learner score on 4.5 out of 5 on a learner score L1 feedback. We're also talking about, so besides doing programs with our partners' content, we were also delivering our own content through our own Leaders as Teachers program. We were also doing a lot of other social learning and peer-to-peer learning. We've been running learning circles in the organization. So therefore, all the pull and all the framework that we created resulted in more than 62,000 learning hours invested in about 4,000 colleagues. From a program perspective, I think back-end calculations would tell me that we've got close to about 700 assets that were utilized in the form of either content through ILT, which is instructor-led program, or even through e-learning programs that we have deployed to kind of bring that journey into a blended form of choice and convenience of would you like to attend a class program or would you just be self-driven and do it on your own. Now, the business impact that it had is I'm very happy to say that we have improved business delivery. We are so we measure our business in terms of circulation that we have, and I'm happy to note that we are at 100% pre-COVID levels. So whatever circulation we had for our newspaper dailies, we're doing as much as we were doing pre-COVID. The business recovery is also above 90%. We're similar, so we have reached a point where we would really call ourselves on our trajectory for growth. This also comes on the back of the hand, the on back of the winds that we are able to deploy talent internally. We released about 53 IGPs last year, and most of those positions, almost 60% of those positions were closed internally. Now, when positions close internally, you know that that's a positive sign that people are learning. They are wanting to learn because they are wanting to try the new on one side. For the organization, it helps because this is really saying that talent mobility is something that we've been able to enable. We've been able to ready talent for future roles, and that's clearly a positive direction. So what we also measure ourselves on is that we're looking at who all are investing in their learning. And another partnership that we did with upGrad is we started our own learning academy. We call it the BCCL Learning Academy, and with other partners as well, we've been able to curate a certain kind of courses based on the competencies of success that we have defined. And those courses and certifications from, of course, Ivy League colleges or at least the big renowned universities globally are put up for individuals to sign up for. As an organization, we support this through an education assistance policy where an individual can apply for education assistance and bases the role and the importance of the skill. We allow or we grant education assistance to an individual, which is an employee, to actually take up a course, complete, and then help us with the learning that the individual gets. So that BCCL Learning Academy has also seen a lot of uptake. We're looking at a lot of people coming and visiting the site that we have, as well as signing up for certain courses that we have. So I think all in all, talent fulfillment, unique learner percentage, learner voice, these are all indicators of the fact that we've been able to create the impact that we wanted to.
Thanks for sharing all those, learnings with us. But also talking about learnings, Meenakshi, if you could also tell us some of the greatest lessons or learnings for upGrad through this partnership with BCCL, and how did it fulfill the need for empowering a workforce with new age skill sets? What's your take on that?
So Pallavi, just before I get into it, I'm still reeling from the data points that Gaurika has shared. The way that she's articulated, the learning assets that she's created, and especially the IGP. Gaurika's 60 plus IGP, like as a business owner myself, is phenomenal. The amount of time, efficiencies, and productivity that the organization would have gained is fantastic. I need to connect with you offline and learn how you did that and emulate that for ourselves. Coming back to you, Pallavi, and your query, pretty much every deployment is unique, and we always reflect back as an organization. So something that we promote ourselves internally is to really have this learning mindset, this reflective mindset, which you will see and hear in most of the things that we speak about. So if I were to really break this down into three, the first one that we as a team felt the most strongly was that the scope of talent development across all levels of the employees and is immense, and it'll affect the way the current and the future teams work. A case in point here is this particular deployment also won us together the gold at the Brandon Hall Awards, which is widely seen as the Oscars of learning deployment. It showed not only that the work was happening had impact, but also that it is globally relevant, and there is going to be regard and manifestation of that across different teams, verticals, geos. The second one, the success of this program meant that the AKAR or the AKAR-based learning that we've been promoting out to the market is applicable for one, skilling at scale, and second, across all levels. We really see it becoming the future of work. The BCCL success story is another feather in terms of putting this out there. The third and the last one I would say is that the learning teams can be a strong partner to businesses if they create a standardized and agile. And this is the important part. Creating standardized programs bring in flexibility at times. Seeing the BCCL deployment, they were a calendar standardized programs, but there was a lot of agility that was brought in without losing the original essence of it. This builds in repeatability and scale for skilling the workforce, eventually delivering very strong and quantifiable business outcomes across the organization.
Wonderful. So now, as we are moving towards the end of the program, one last question for you, Gaurika. If you could share some best practices with our community on how organizations can create effective L&D programs, keeping role transformation as the priority, and also considering the current dynamic scenario of work.
Thanks, Pallavi. I think that's the holy grail. It's not something that is very easily achievable, and in the brittle world that we're in, it's very important that we keep that agility in the learning team as well. But since you asked for something, I think I would have a 3M mantra where I really think that any learning architecture, keeping the entire role transformation, business transformation, etc., as context, would be the 3Ms for me: meaning, management, and measure. And all three of them and the interplay of this is what will make a good learning strategy. Let me spend a minute talking about what I mean when I use meaning, management, and measure. Meaning for me is the alignment with business strategy. Any learning agenda is absolutely misdirected if it is not related to business outcomes. So we need to know what business we're in, what is it that the business wants to drive, and therefore what are the skills that are important for that business to drive. And the learning agenda has to therefore dovetail itself into that. Is the business in the mode of growth? Is the business in mode of just holding fort? Is market share important? Is hunting new clients important, etc.? And therefore, those skills need to be built. Also, when you bring meaning, it also means not only should it be meaningful for the organization, it should also be meaningful for the individual. And therefore, as individuals, we need to manage a portfolio of careers, which basically means that if an individual, we all know the S curve of innovation, where you start slow, it increases, and then there is a plateau, and then there's a decline that happens. The minute the decline happens, you need to create a new curve of S, which is the S curve of innovation. An individual is also like that. If you keep the individual in the same role, there will be a slow takeoff. Once the takeoff happens, there'll be speed and efficiency of performance. But once the person spends a lot of time in that role, there will be plateau. And of course, there'll be a decline because monotony sets in. So that's the time the learning intervention has to come in and bring that meaning to the individual, where you need to facilitate the movement or the jump from an old S curve to a new S curve. So that's the meaning that the learning architecture really needs to bring in. The second M for me is management, which is about the efficiency of the learning ecosystem. So, what kind of content are we creating? What kind of architecture are we deploying? Are we able to bring in that culture of learning where the learner experience is epitomized, where we're talking about bringing in solutions of scale, yet they are hyper personalized. So while we want to miniaturize everything in many ways, and provide those modular forms of learning where individuals can form their own paths, where individuals can find their own comfort of learning depending on the style of learning that they do. So management for me is the entire infrastructure and deployment of the learning content. So while meaning was defining the background and the context and the why, the management is the how you deploy it. And the third for me is the measure, which actually is an overarching need where you're actually being able to assess the ROI of what you have done. If I can still use that the word the return on investment piece, because it will actually come out of the assessment of capability gaps that we had, as well as the estimated value of any learning intervention, because we would want to go for the moon, but does that really make sense? And that will come where this is something that is the anchor of the ship, that we need to know what are the budgets, where are we deploying it, is there a differentiated learning budget which is going to the best in the organization, so that you're building them, retaining them, engaging them, so that they get to be more and more productive. So therefore, measure to me would be the outcome, and that interplay of the meaning, the management of your learning content and deployment, as well as the measure of success, would really create the right learning architecture or learning roadmap for me.
Well, on that note, it's time to wrap the conversation. But Meenakshi, just one more question from you. If you could also share some of the best practices with the community on accelerating the role transformation for the future work, and any message that you would like to give to the community, which we might not have covered during our discussion today.
And thanks for that, Pallavi. upGrad person, upGrad for business, we're very mission driven. Community building is one of the core ethos as we go out and try to deploy our programs as well. Thinking back on the work that we've done in the past, I would again bring attention back to the 6 factors, the mosaic that we spoke about. That's really quintessential for the skilling of the workforce, not just for today, but to prepare ourselves for the future as well. One of the most effective ways to tackle role transformation, which is pretty much the core topic for today, is by credentialing of the talent. Businesses need to invest in qualification as a talent differentiator that can also help tackle skill obsolescence. I heard Gaurika speak about standardization as well. If we can do this, is scale, it can open up new venues and opportunities for organizations, teams, and employees. Specific to role transformation, it needs to be across the industry, across the different ladders in an organization, because what we also sometimes end up seeing is companies tend to prioritize transformation opportunities for some teams, some roles than the others. If we can take this together holistically, we'll always create venues for ourselves as an organization, and we can cater to the market vagaries better if we do this holistically. So essentially, what we're talking about is a repeatable skilling plan across the board for talent transformation for everyone in an organization. And it's not just enough for an enterprise to develop a part of their employees, but across the entire length and breadth, and which is what BCCL did so wonderfully well. At upGrad for Business, we look at delivering these programs that suit all the levels of the talent pyramid, whether it is new campus hires, onboarding, early career, management, succession planning, leadership, and more importantly, leadership development. The best practice that we follow is we try to map these modalities to different business use cases so that we are able to together produce maximum business outcome. These modalities enable the flexibility that can suit different companies, different roles, and different businesses, depending on whatever curve that they are in the organization. So just kind of sharing this for our audience, the modalities that I'm talking about is one could be blended deployment, which is a mix of self-paced and virtual instructor-led sessions, which could include master classes as well. The third is more modular. In the current world, we are always going to be running against time. So modular bite-sized learning, again, across self-paced and virtual instructor-led, we see as getting a lot more recall. The third, of course, is university certifications. These could be specific domain, this could be managerial, this could even be doctorate programs. We also specifically bring in and are seeing interest in small group coaching, and executive coaching is elements that companies are really interested in. While we've spoken about a lot of behavioral competencies throughout this conversation, the yin to this yang is also using data skills and data technology to amplify growth for organization. In fact, interestingly, we worked with a leading textile company, upskilling their employees on data analytics and virtualization. And what was really heartening is we saw about automation of 500 plus dashboards, which created about 600 Excel sheets with Power BI instead of running all of these manually. This empowered data-driven business decision at the touch of a button and resulted in shorter turnaround times. Just imagine how significant that would be for a manufacturing sort of an environment. While all of these are some of the things that I'd like our community to take note of, and of course, feel free to kind of reach out to me for any queries. But lastly, and most importantly, I'd like to take this moment to really thank the BCCL group and especially Gaurika for really being a catalyst of this change. And I can imagine making this entire organization and program comes with a lot of persuasion and influence that she brings to the table as well.
Well, thank you, both of you, for sharing your learnings and your insights. And it was wonderful having you both on the panel. So since we are running short on time, we'll have to wrap up for today's session, but we'll bring in more exciting and impactful takeaways on empowering your organizational growth strategies to thrive in the new age economy. Stay tuned for our next discussion. Thanks everyone for watching. And thank you, Minaxi and Gaurika once again.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Thank you for having us. Bye.